Hi, I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Dahlia Happy Days Cherry Red step-by-step instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the Dahlia Happy Days Cherry Red by using the Nature Sketch Create step-by-step painting instructions. You can help this tiny business by clicking the like button and subscribing to this YouTube channel and checking out naturesketchcreate.com. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, have fun, and don't get too caught up if you think you may have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So you want to tape part of the transfer image to the back of the watercolor paper. Make sure you don't cover up anything you plan to transfer. Everything is optional. This is your sketch. Make it your own. So take the graphite transfer paper, dark side down, light side up. Place it between the transfer image and the watercolor paper. And then press down gently. You don't want to press down too hard on any areas you don't want marks, because some of that graphite might transfer and you might not want that. And you can remove it, most of it later, but maybe not all of it. And any kind of mistakes are going to make this imperfectly perfect, so don't worry about it, but it's good. Just try not to put a lot of pressure on there in places that you don't want graphite transferred. So you can put a little bit of pressure, so I'm just lightly holding this down to make sure it doesn't move while I'm drawing over the lines. And you're going to just trace over all of the lines. It does not need to be exact. It's going to look great no matter what. And after you transfer just a very small space, go ahead and gently hold down your image and then just flip it up to check to see that it's actually transferring. So you have your graphite transfer paper placed correctly and that you're pressing hard enough and maybe not too hard. You do want to actually see those lines at the end when you're done painting to redraw them with the micron pens. So go ahead and go through and trace over all those lines, and this is supposed to be a very relaxing exercise. Something that you don't really have to think much, just kind of drawing over them. So maybe put on a podcast, sit outside and listen to nature, put on an audiobook, maybe listen to your favorite music, whatever way works best for you to just kind of relax. And go ahead and trace over all of those lines to transfer them. Once you think you have all the lines transferred, you can just kind of flip this up and down like a flip book to check to see what you might have missed. And I always end up missing at least a few lines. And if you don't get them all now, it's fine. You can always add them later, but it's helpful to get them if you can right now. Instead of using a pencil to draw over lines, you can use a colored pen with a fine tip, and just as long as there's some pressure going over those lines, they'll transfer. I just kind of move my eye from one part of the picture to the next until I see each part. Just kind of move my eye from one part of the image to the next, flipping up and down so I can check to see if I got all the lines. Looks pretty good. I think I got most of them at least. And I'm going to go ahead and transfer the common name and the scientific name. The common name is, the text is bigger than my pencil tip, so I'll just outline the inner part of that. And then I'll just draw right over the scientific name since it's about the same size as my pencil tip. Now that all the lines transfer, I'm going to go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper, and this can be used again and again and again, so I'm going to save it, put it to the side, And go ahead and take off the tape from the back of the watercolor paper. And also, you can remove it from your transfer image. And this tape came off without pulling up a lot of paper or anything, so I'll reuse this as well. And this can be used while you're creating your painting, and it can be used to protect your image from any smudges from your hand or spatters from your paint when you're adding it to your palette or whatever you need it for to protect your image, or even just to cover it up when it's dry to protect it from anything if you have to stop at any time. And go and take your kneaded eraser, and you'll want to knead it to a light gray spot. If it has any kind of darkness or black on it, it might leave smudges rather than remove them. So you can just kind of rub it over the smudges left behind from the graphite transfer paper, and you can lighten lines as well by just kind of dabbing over them. So if anything's a little too dark, you can just do that. And I do see one little line. I'm going to go ahead and just draw it in with a pencil right there for that. And now that I have all my lines transferred, I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in Dahlia green and orange. So first you want to mix the Dahlia green. We have 6 drops of the 23H sap green. Make sure to shake up these paints before you add them to your palette, because sometimes the pigment will settle on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 2 drops of the 21H sepia. 1, 2. You can put a little bit of pressure on the barrel of the handle here of the water brush, adding a little bit of water to the paint when you're mixing it. And alternatively, if you're using a regular paintbrush, you can just add a little bit of paint from whatever you're storing your water in when you're mixing it. And then go ahead and clean off your brush on your towel. And we're going to use the wettest lightest, which in this case is going to be the least concentrated. You want to pick up a little bit and add it to the side, a bunch of water. Dab it off on your towel and test it out and see if it's light enough. Looks pretty good to me. And actually I might add just a little bit more colors, a little darker than that. Maybe I added too much water. Dab it off on my towel and test it out. That looks a little bit better. And there's going to be a kind of a medium dark color, so I'm going to test that out and make sure I have that. And there you go. So this is more concentrated. That looks about right comparing it to the other colors. You can even test out the third color there. So cleaned off my brush and picking up some more paint, dabbing it on my towel, and then adding it to all of the leaves, stems, and fill areas as seen above in the picture 2A. And you can just add it in one single layer, kind of like you're coloring in with a crayon or a marker. And if you think it might be just a little dark, just dab it off onto your towel, and it'll lighten up that color because some of the pigment will remain on the towel and there'll be less on your brush. And whenever you need to, you can pick up a little bit more, adding a little bit of water, dabbing it off on my towel, and then continuing. And you can do this for the green areas you see in step 2's image. If you have too much water, just dab it on your towel If you need to pick up more paint because it's too light, just pick some more up and then dab it on your towel before continuing. Now that I've filled in all of those green areas, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush and mix the Dahlia orange. So I'll take the 25H Hansi aluminium, let me 12 drops of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And 1 drop of the 3H Brilliant Cad Red. Just 1. And make sure you have a clean brush, just a little green on my brush. And then mix the color, adding a little bit of water. Clean off your brush. Pick up just a little bit and take it to the side and add some water to it. And I accidentally touched this area, so some of that color is bleeding in here, but I still have this area that's very light, that's separate. But as you can see, it's going to make this more concentrated because it's just kind of flowing into my new color here. But then there's a breaking point and it's not going to mix, so that's okay. I'm going to test it out. It looks very light. Might want just a little bit more, so I'm going to dab it, add a little bit more to that. That looks a little bit better. So I'm going to pick some more up, dab it on my towel, and then I'm just going to add it to the buds and the stigmas as you see in 2's image. So there's little stigmas sticking out here. And this does not need to be exact, just kind of add it in. And then the stigmas here as well. See, I'm being pretty rough with my placement. And then here on the buds. Then I'm going to clean off my brush and move on to step 3 when this is dry. Step 3, paint in Dahlia magenta and green. So I want to mix the Dahlia magenta. So take the 5H magenta and 2 drops of that. And I'm not going to mix this color because it's already mixed, and I'm going to want at least concentrated version of this, so something that's wet in my palette. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of it, take it to the side, and add some water. If I added water and mixed this, it would take up a lot of space in my palette. It's very unnecessary. I'll dab it on my towel and then test it out on my test paper. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and pick some more up, dab it on my towel before applying it to my painting. And I'm going to add that to the flowers, filaries, stems, the spent flower, and some of the leaf veins. So there's a couple leaf veins. There's this one here. Might be a little dark, so I'm gonna dab it off on my towel. And then there's one right here. And then this one right here. So I have to be careful not to smudge that. I usually start top to bottom so I don't smudge, but I want to show you those real quick. Dab off my paintbrush on my towel after picking some more paint up again. And then I'm going to go ahead and start adding this to the flowers. And if you don't think it's dark enough, it might need to be a little darker. Pick up a little bit more paint, dab it off on the towel, and then reapply. It looks a bit better. and try to avoid the little stigmas, those half circles, little domes. But if you paint in, it's okay. And this is going to go on filaries, so I'm going to just go and do that next. Since I'm right-handed, I like to go left to right so I don't smudge. It's just helpful. If you want smudges in your painting, maybe that's a stylized choice you want to make, go ahead and go for it. Get those smudges. And add that vein there, leaf vein there. And pick up a little more paint and add it to this other flower, avoiding again the stigmas. And just like with a marker or crayon, just filling in that space, moving the paint around a little bit, starting on one side and then working to the other. And you can go back and add more color whenever you need to. Clean off my brush here. And when I was filling in this magenta color, I realized I forgot to paint in these stigmas here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that Dahlia orange. And this is dry, so it's not going to bleed together or mix together. So I'm just going to dab those in. Just need to make sure it's dry, and you can go back if you think you may have missed anything. I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm going to make sure that this dries, and then I'm going to add in the dry dark Dahlia green. So that's kind of this medium concentrated color. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it to revive it because it's dried out a little bit. Dab it on my towel and test it out. It looks like it needs just a little bit more. I add more water, so it needs a little bit more color. So I picked up a little bit of color, mixed it in, dab it on my towel, and test it out again. And I think that looks better, like that concentration. So I add a tiny bit of water, make sure it moves well. Dab it on my towel, make sure that this is dry first. And it dries really fast because it's all dry already. It dries really fast because we're not putting a lot of water on this. It dries really fast because we're not adding a lot of water to the paper. So all the water to change the darkness, the level of darkness of each color is done in the palette instead of on the piece of paper itself. So go ahead and add it in. It's going to kind of go in these darker areas, kind of over all the lines. Then I'm going to clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in Dahlia maroon and orange. So you want to mix the Dahlia maroon, 10 drops of a 3H Cad red, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1 drop of the H ultramarine. Go ahead and mix it up like we did before, adding just a little bit of water. Cleaning it off on your towel, picking it up again, and testing it out on your test paper. Looks pretty good to me. And dab it up, pick up some more, dab it off on my towel, and then I'm going to add it like I see in step 4's image to the flowers filaries, stems, buds, and the veins. And if you're not quite sure about that placement, you can always refer to your final reference image as well as your step 4 image. So go ahead and go through and add that color in. And don't worry too much about being exact with the placement. Just get the same general area. It's gonna look great. When you have all of the maroon added, go ahead and clean off your brush and pick up some of that really dark Dahlia orange. Dab it off on your towel and test it out on your paper. Looks like the right color to me. So just add it sparingly to the stigmas and the buds and make sure the area you're working in is dry beforehand. So don't paint over the entire stigma, just kind of dab it in there kind of randomly just to give it a little bit more contrast. So there's some light and dark areas. Same with the buds, just kind of add it in there in a few areas sparingly, just leaving some of that other color showing beneath. As far as the amount, it's up to you. This is your image. Make it your own. And clean off my brush. And at this point, it's kind of an ugly stage. It's going to look great in the end. So just keep on going. Let this dry and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in Dahlia red and green. So first you want to mix the Dahlia red. It's 3 drops of the magenta. 1, 2, 3. And 1 drop of the sap green. And 1 drop of the cad red. Go ahead and mix it up with a clean brush, adding just a little bit of water. This is all dry, so I'm going to flip it over and use the other side. Dab it off onto my towel and test it out. Looks like that driest, darkest color J. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, pick up a little bit and move it to the side and create that wettest, lightest color by adding some water in the palette. Then I'm going to dab it off on my towel and check it out. It looks great. So I'm going to pick some up, dab it off on my towel, and I'm just going to paint right over the flowers. Actually, that looks a little light, and I can still, while that's wet, pick up a little bit more color added in. Looks a little bit better. And I'm going to go over, while it's still wet, I'm going to go over those same areas. Didn't look quite dark enough. And that's okay to make mistakes. And your image will probably be a little bit different. I know my image turns out a little different every time I paint. And clean off your brush. And then take this driest, darkest color of green, and see it doesn't really move very well in the palette. It's kind of slug, like mud. Add a little bit of water to it to give it some fluidity. It's a little bit better. And then test it out. Looks good, so very dark. And then I'm just going to add it like you see in step 5's image. And again, the placement doesn't have to be exact, just kind of add it in the same general area. Once you have all the green added, go ahead and clean off your brush, let it dry, and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in the Dahlia red. So you want to paint in the driest, darkest Dahlia red to darken the flowers, but make sure to preserve some of the color underneath, like you can see in the final reference image. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Dahlia red, add a tiny bit of water, test it out on my paper, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add it in a sparing way throughout these flowers. Get outside the lines, that's totally fine. I want to be able to preserve some of that lighter color underneath, so I'm kind of painting around it a little bit and then painting over that dark color that's already there. Once you have all of the Dahlia red added in the way you like it, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. So you want to use the black 005 micron to redraw the lines you transferred, and you can refer to your transfer image and your final reference image for placement. And you'll want to redefine anything, any places where the watercolor has gone outside the lines. That's a place where you can go ahead and draw the line outside as well. So go ahead and draw a line around that new watercolor area. Or you can stay with the original lines, it's up to you. Also, go ahead and redraw the outline for the common name and the scientific name if that's something that you added in, and add some half circles here to create the disc floret buds that are here in the disc florets. So you can just, like umbrellas, you can just add some in, and how many is up to you. You just kind of draw them in there. So go ahead and redraw those lines. Again, this might be a good time to put on a podcast, some music, or an audiobook, or whatever might help you just kind of relax. Once you have all the black 005 micron lines added, go ahead and move on to the 01 micron, which is a slightly thicker micron, and use it to thicken some of the leaf veins, just a few here and there, or all of them, depending on what you want to do, and the outer bloom edges. Some of the ligulate grooves as well. You can also just add it wherever you think you might need it. This is your painting, make it your own. Lastly, add it to the scientific name, just to thicken it up a little bit. Next, be using the 08 black micron to thicken some of the lines. Make sure when you add this that you don't move your hand over it while it's wet, it will smudge. So you want to make sure it's dry if you're moving your hand over it. And you want to use this on some of the inner bloom lines and grooves. So in this areas in here, just kind of thicken those up like you see in the final reference image. And outline the leaves and stems. You can go ahead and outline them entirely. And to outline the filiaries here, so outline those. And some of the disc floret buds. So you don't want to do all of them, just some of them here in the center of both of these flowers. These flower blooms, flower heads. So just go ahead and go throughout and add those thicker lines. We're done. Great job. Keep practicing. You've created a painting unique to you that only you could do. Next, you have some options. You can punch holes in this and add it to your sketchbook. You can frame it, gift it, make sure to share it on our Facebook fan art page. I'd really love to see it. And use the hashtag #JanitraCreateArt to share it with the community and possibly have it featured on our social media. Check out the Nature Sketch Crate website to sign up for the newsletter for future updates and to shop for future crates.